Captain Daniel Harper stood in the center of the council chamber and felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes on him. The massive dome stretched above him, filled with representatives from 40 different species. Each one sat in their designated section, whispering in languages he could not understand. His translator earpiece buzzed with fragments of conversation, none of it friendly. Ambassador Shaw stood beside him, her face calm despite the tension in the air. She had warned him this day would come. 3 months ago, human forces had defended the colony of New Haven against slaver ships. The battle had been quick and brutal. Every slaver ship had been destroyed. Every human colonist had survived. The Galactic Council had called it a war crime. The Council recognizes the human delegation, a voice boomed through the chamber. A towering reptilian with scales that shifted from green to dark blue rose from his seat at the center of the upper tier, his vertical pupils fixed on Daniel with cold precision. Captain Harper, you stand accused of violating the Galactic Peace Accord, Article 7, Section 3, excessive force against a registered species. Daniel clenched his jaw. Registered species. The slavers had attacked civilian transports, killed 17 people, and taken hundreds more. But because they had signed a trade agreement with the Council 50 years ago, they were protected. With respect, said, her voice steady and professional. We acted in defense of our citizens. The slaver vessels opened fire first. We have provided all combat records and sensor logs as evidence. A chittering sound came from the left side of the chamber. A creature with 4 arms and compound eyes clicked her mandibles together. Defense does not require total destruction. Your species used weapons that left no survivors, no prisoners, no mercy. They were killing our people, Daniel said, unable to stay quiet any longer. We sent 3 warnings. We gave them chances to withdraw. They fired on unarmed transport ships filled with families. His tail swept across the floor. The matter is not whether your people were threatened. The matter is how you responded. Humanity has been part of galactic society for only 30 years, yet you have been involved in more military conflicts than species who have been members for centuries. Stepped forward, because we will not stand by and watch innocents die. If that is a crime in your eyes, then perhaps we do not belong in this council. A murmur ran through the chamber. Several species shifted in their seats. Daniel noticed that some of the smaller delegations, species that had little military power of their own, looked uncomfortable. They understood. They knew what it meant to be vulnerable. But the powerful species, the ones who had shaped the council for 1,000 years, looked satisfied. This was what they wanted. Humanity had always been a problem, too aggressive, too willing to fight, too dangerous. Raised one clawed hand. The council has debated this matter for 3 weeks. We have reviewed the evidence. We have consulted with legal experts and military advisors. The verdict has been reached. The chamber fell silent. Daniel felt's hand brush against his arm, a small gesture of support. By a vote of 31 to 9, the Galactic Council has decided that humanity poses a fundamental threat to galactic peace, announced. Effective immediately, all human colonies, stations, and vessels are to be withdrawn from Council space. You have 5 years to complete this exodus. Any human presence remaining after that time will be considered an act of war. Daniel heard take a sharp breath beside him. Exile, they were being exiled. You cannot be serious, said, her composure cracking for the first time. We have 12 colonies in Council space, 50 stations, trade agreements with 17 species. You are talking about displacing millions of people. A's mandibles clicked rapidly. You should have considered that before you showed the galaxy your true nature. Humans are from a savage planet. You bring violence wherever you go. The Council has been patient, but patience has limits. We saved lives, Daniel said, his voice rising. We protected the weak, we did what was right, and this is how you repay us. Eyes narrowed. You did what you thought was right, Captain. That is precisely the problem. Humanity does not follow the rules. You make your own judgments. You act without Council approval. In a society of thousands of worlds, such behavior cannot be tolerated. Turn to face the entire chamber. Then let the record show that humanity rejects this verdict. We reject the notion that defending innocent lives is a crime. We reject a system that protects slavers and punishes defenders. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. A few of the smaller species looked at each other with what might have been approval. However, continued, her voice growing stronger, we will comply with this exile. Not because we accept your judgment, but because we will not give you an excuse to turn this into a war. Humanity will withdraw peacefully. We will take our ships, our people, and our values to the edge of known space, and there we will build something better. Seemed taken aback by her response. He had expected anger, perhaps even violence. Instead, he got dignity and defiance wrapped together. "The Council thanks you for your cooperation," he said stiffly. "You may begin your preparations immediately." Daniel turned and walked toward the exit. As they passed through the rows of alien delegations, Daniel noticed something interesting. The 9 species who had voted against the Exile, small, peaceful civilizations who had benefited from human protection in the past, stood as they passed. It was a gesture of respect, one that would not be forgotten. Outside the chamber, Daniel let out a long breath. 5 years to move 12 colonies. It will be the largest migration in human history. Nodded, already pulling up data on her tablet. "We will need every available ship, every pilot, every volunteer." "Where will we go?" Daniel asked. Looked up at the stars visible through the massive windows of the Council station. "As far from here as we can get, to the outer rim, to unexplored space, somewhere these fools cannot touch us." "They think Exile will weaken us," Daniel said quietly. Smiled, and there was something cold in that smile. "Then they do not understand humanity at all. We were forged on a captain. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We reached the stars from a planet that tried to kill us every day. Exile will not break us. It will make us stronger." Daniel thought about the faces in that council chamber, the satisfaction in eyes, the fear poorly hidden beneath A's words. They had voted for Exile because they were afraid. Afraid of what humanity could become. Afraid of what humanity represented. They were right to be afraid, Daniel realized, but not for the reasons they thought. 5 years, he said. We should make them count. Nodded, every single day. "We are not running away, Captain. We are going home. And when we are ready, when we have built something magnificent in the dark beyond their borders, they will realize what they have lost." Admiral Gregory Wells stood on the observation deck of the orbital station and watched the construction below. The planet New Terra spun slowly beneath him, its cities glowing like jewels against the dark continents. 20 years ago, this world had been nothing but raw wilderness and potential. Now it housed 8 million people and served as the capital of the human confederation. "The shipyard reports another dreadnought will be completed ahead of schedule," Commander Mitchell said, walking up beside him with a data tablet. "That makes 12 in our fleet. Council intelligence would probably die of shock if they knew." Gregory smiled. "Let them keep thinking we are struggling out here in the dark. Every probe they send never makes it back with accurate information. I wonder if they have figured out why yet." Grinned, probably still blaming it on technical failures. They cannot imagine we have the technology to detect and intercept their surveillance ships. It had been 20 years since the Exile. 20 years since the Galactic Council had forced humanity to withdraw from their space. The Council had believed isolation would weaken humanity. They had thought humans would beg to return, humbled and compliant. They had been catastrophically wrong. Dr. Karen Price entered the observation deck, her lab coat slightly wrinkled from long hours of work. "Admiral, you need to see this. We have finished analyzing the mineral samples from the asteroid belt in the Kraken system." Gregory turned from the window. "Good news, I hope." Karen's eyes were bright with excitement. "Better than good. We have found crystalline deposits that do not exist anywhere in Council space. When properly processed, they can store energy at densities that make their best batteries look like primitive cells. I am talking about power systems that are 10 times more efficient than anything the Council has." Whistled softly. "How long until we can implement this?" 3 months for prototypes, Karen said. 6 months for mass production. Admiral, this changes everything. Our ships will be faster, our weapons will be more powerful, our cities will have energy to spare." Gregory nodded slowly. This was the pattern that had repeated itself for 2 decades. Cut off from galactic trade, humanity had been forced to innovate. Every challenge had been met with human ingenuity. Every obstacle had been overcome with determination. The Exile Zone, as the Council called it, had turned out to be rich with resources that Council species had never bothered to explore. Without their trade restrictions and their regulations, human scientists and engineers had made breakthrough after breakthrough. "How are the colony worlds progressing?" Gregory asked. pulled up a star map on the main display. 40 dots glowed in the darkness beyond council borders. All 40 colonies are self-sufficient now. Population across all worlds has reached 32 million. We have established trade routes between every system. The economy is growing at 12% per year. And our friends? Gregory asked. His expression softened. They are thriving. They have integrated well into our confederation. Their technology meshes nicely with ours. It had been a gift from the council, though they had not meant it that way. 5 years ago, human explorers had discovered a small alien civilization living on a single world in Exile territory. They had been exiled by the council 2 centuries earlier for refusing to surrender their independence. When the council had demanded they give up their right to self-governance, they had refused. So they had been driven out, left to survive on their own. Humanity had found them struggling, their population declining, their technology stagnant. Gregory had made a decision that day. He had offered them protection, partnership, and friendship. They had accepted with tears of gratitude. Now they were full members of the Confederation, their engineers working alongside humans, their ships flying under the same banner. They had brought knowledge of council tactics and weaknesses. More importantly, they had brought hope. Humanity was not alone out here in the dark. Foster is requesting a video call, the communication officer announced. Put her through, Gregory said. The screen flickered to life. Foster, governor of New Terra, appeared. She was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She had been one of the original colonists on the Exodus ships, a young engineer who had risen through sheer competence to lead the capital world. Admiral, we have a situation, she said without preamble. A council probe managed to penetrate deeper than usual before we intercepted it. It got close enough to New Terra to take detailed scans. Gregory felt a chill. How detailed? Detailed enough to see our cities, our shipyards, our fleet, said grimly. We destroyed it before it could transmit, but if they sent one that got this close, they will send more. Leaned forward. We need to accelerate the defense grid expansion. No more gaps in coverage. Agreed, Gregory said. But this also tells us something important. The council is getting nervous. They want to know what we have been doing out here. Corinne crossed her arms. Because they expected us to fail. They expected us to come crawling back. Instead, we have disappeared into the dark and gone silent. That must terrify them. Gregory thought about the council, about species that had grown comfortable in their power, that had spent centuries believing themselves the peak of civilization. They had exiled humanity to preserve their sense of order. But order built on fear and control was fragile. Humanity had learned that lesson well in its own history. Double the patrol schedules, Gregory ordered. I want every approach vector covered. If council ships want to spy on us, make them work for it, and make sure any probe that gets too close suffers convenient malfunctions. Nodded, understood. There is one more thing, Admiral. The Senate has approved the funding for Project Defiant. Gregory felt a smile spread across his face. Project Defiant was the culmination of 20 years of development. A new class of warship that would be larger, faster, and more powerful than anything humanity had built before. More powerful than anything the Council had, if their intelligence was accurate. When can we begin construction? He asked. Ground was broken this morning, said with satisfaction. Estimated completion time is 3 years. 3 years, in 3 years, humanity would have a flagship worthy of an empire. Not that they called themselves an empire. The Human Confederation was a democracy, a union of free worlds. But Gregory knew the rest of the galaxy would see it differently. Out here beyond council borders, humanity had built something magnificent. They had built it in the dark, in secret, driven by the bitter memory of exile. And they had done it all without asking permission from anyone. Keep me informed, Gregory said. And good work, all of you. Tell the Senate that the Confederation is proud of New Terra. The screen went dark. Gregory turned back to the window, watching the planet turn below. Somewhere down there in the capital city, construction crews were laying the foundation for a ship that would change history. Admiral said quietly, what happens when the Council realizes what we have become? Gregory thought about that. The Council believed they had exiled a troublesome species. They had no idea they had created a rival that had spent 20 years learning, growing, and building in the shadows. They will have 2 choices, Gregory said finally. Accept us as equals or try to destroy us. I suspect they will choose the latter. Karen looked troubled. Can we win a war against the entire council? We will not fight the entire council, Gregory said. Most of them are peaceful species who have never fired a shot in anger. Their military is controlled by a handful of powerful species who have grown lazy and overconfident. We have been preparing for war since the day of our exile. They have been preparing for ceremonies and parades. Nodded slowly. Then let them come. Let them see what they created when they sent us into the dark. Gregory remembered Ambassador Shaw's words on the day of exile. We are not running away. We are going home. She had been right. Humanity had gone home to the dark between the stars, to the hard and empty places where thrived. And in those hard places, humanity had become something the Council could never understand. Not an empire built on conquest, but a civilization built on resilience. Not an army built for aggression, but a fleet built for defense. But defense of their people, their values, their right to exist free from Council control. Send a message to all colony worlds, Gregory said. Tell them the Confederation is strong. Tell them we have built something here that our will be proud of. Tell them that humanity's exile is ending. Ending, Karen asked. Are we going back to Council space? Gregory shook his head. No, we are not going back. But the galaxy is going to discover that Exile was not a President Richard Cole stared at the holographic display in the war room and tried to process what he was seeing. The images were grainy, pulled from long-range sensors and Council distress signals, but they told a clear story. The Galactic Council was dying. How many worlds have fallen? He asked quietly. Commander Lisa Grant, head of Confederation Intelligence, manipulated the display. Red markers spread across the galactic map like a disease. 17 in the past month. Another 23 under siege. The Council military has lost 70% of its fleet. Admiral Daniel Harper, now commander of the entire Confederation Navy, leaned forward. His hair had gone gray in the 20 years since exile, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. What are we dealing with? The reports are fragmented. Lisa pulled up a series of images. The room went silent. The ships on display were massive, organic in appearance, their hulls covered in what looked like carapace armor. They moved in swarms, thousands of smaller craft surrounding larger vessels that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. They call themselves the Devourers, Lisa said. They came from beyond the galactic rim 2 months ago. As far as we can tell, they are a hive species, no individual consciousness, no communication, no negotiation. They land on worlds, strip them of all biological matter, and move on. Richard felt cold. Strip them. Every plant, every animal, every sentient being, they process it all into some kind of organic fuel for their ships, Lisa said. The Council has tried to negotiate, tried to surrender, tried everything. The Devourers do not respond. They just consume. Dear God, someone whispered. Daniel stood and walked to the display, studying the enemy ships. Their technology. Superior to the Council in almost every way, Lisa said. Faster engines, stronger weapons, shields that absorb energy weapons. The Council throws ships at them, and the Devourers swat them aside like insects. Richard looked around the room. His cabinet, the military leadership, the top scientists of the Confederation. All of them wore the same expression, horror mixed with grim calculation. The Council sent an envoy, Richard said. It was not a question. Lisa nodded. 3 days ago himself, he is waiting in orbit aboard a shuttle. He requests an audience. The room erupted in angry voices. Richard held up his hand for silence. I know what you are all thinking. The Council exiled us. They called us savages and drove us from their space. They have spent 20 years pretending we do not exist, and now that they face extinction, they come begging for help. We should tell them to handle their own problems, someone said. Let them see what it is like to face annihilation alone, another voice added. Richard looked at Daniel. The Admiral had been there on the day of exile. He had stood before the Council and been judged unworthy. If anyone had the right to refuse, it was him. What do you think, Admiral? Richard asked. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. I think the Devourers will not stop at Council borders. If they consume the Council, they will come for us next. Better to fight them now, with whatever help the Council can provide, than to fight them alone later. So we help the people who exiled us? Someone asked incredulously. Daniel turned to face the room. We do not help them because they deserve it. We help them because it is the right thing to do, because innocent people are dying, because children are being consumed by these monsters. We help them because we are human, and humans do not abandon people in need, not even people who wronged us. Richard felt pride swell in his chest. This was why he had appointed Daniel to lead their military. The man understood that strength without morality was just brutality. There is another consideration, Lisa said. If we save the Council, we will prove our worth to the entire galaxy. They exiled us because they feared us. They called us dangerous. If we come to their rescue now, we show them who we really are. Richard nodded slowly. Bring to me, let us hear what he has to say. An hour later, Richard stood in the diplomatic chamber as entered. The reptilian looked old, older than Richard remembered from the historical recordings. His scales had lost their vibrant color. His movements were slow and weary. Richard said formally, bowed his head. President Cole, thank you for seeing me. I know we have no right to ask anything of humanity. You have no right to ask, Richard agreed. But ask anyway, tell me what brings you here. His tail dragged on the floor. My people are dying, Mr. President, all our people. The Devourers have destroyed everything we have thrown at them. Our best military minds have found no weakness. Our strongest weapons barely scratch their hulls. In 2 months they will reach in 3 months the Galactic Council will cease to exist. And you want humanity to save you, Richard said. I want humanity to save the galaxy, said quietly. The Devourers will not stop with us. They will spread across every world, consuming everything in their path. If they are not stopped, all civilization will end. Richard walked to the window, looking out at the orbital shipyards. Dozens of Confederation ships moved through the construction lanes. Beautiful, deadly ships built by human hands. 20 years ago, your council exiled us, Richard said. You called us dangerous. You said we were too violent for civilized society. We were wrong, said. We were afraid of you, afraid of what you represented. You are order. You questioned our authority. You showed us that the way we had done things for 1,000 years was not the only way. Richard turned to face him. And now you need what you feared. You need our violence, our willingness to fight. Met his eyes. Yes, I will not lie to you, President. We exiled you because we were cowards. We chose order over justice. We chose our comfort over your rights. We were wrong, and now we are paying the price for that mistake. Will the Council accept human help? Richard asked. Or will pride get in the way even now? The Council is desperate, said. Pride died when the first worlds burned. We will accept any help, any terms. We just want to survive. Richard returned to his desk and activated the display. This is our fleet. 87 major warships, 200 support vessels, approximately 15,000 fighters, all equipped with technology the Council has never seen. Technology we developed during our exile. Stared at the display, his vertical pupils widened. This is impossible. In 20 years you built all this. Necessity drives innovation, Daniel said, stepping into the room. You gave us the greatest gift possible when you exiled us. You gave us a reason to excel, a reason to prove you wrong. Richard sat down. Here are my terms. The Confederation fleet will assist the Council against the Devourers. We will fight alongside your forces. We will share our technology and tactics. But when this is over, assuming we survive, there will be changes. What changes? Asked carefully. The exile ends, Richard said. Not because we are begging to return, but because we will no longer accept second-class status. The Confederation will be recognized as an equal power. Our territory remains ours. Our independence is absolute. We will negotiate a mutual defense treaty, but we will not submit to Council authority. Closed his eyes. The Council will agree they have no choice. Make sure they understand something else, Daniel said, his voice hard. We are doing this because it is right, because people need help, but do not mistake our mercy for weakness. The fleet you are about to see is only what we allow you to see. We have capabilities your people cannot imagine. Remember that when the fighting is over. Nodded slowly. I understand, Admiral, and for what it is worth, I am sorry. I voted for your exile. I believed you were a threat. I see now that the only threat was our own fear. Richard stood. Gather your council. Tell them the Human Confederation is mobilizing. Our fleet will be ready to deploy in 48 hours. Send us the coordinates of your defensive positions. And pray that we are as dangerous as you once feared, because we are about to go to war. bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect in his culture. "Thank you, President Cole. You have given us hope when we had none." After left, Daniel approached Richard. "Are you sure about this? Half the Senate wants to let the council burn." "I am sure," Richard said. "Because 50 years from now, I want to look in the eyes and tell them we did the right thing. That when faced with the choice between revenge and righteousness, we chose righteousness." Daniel smiled grimly. "Then let us show these devourers what humanity does to monsters who Pre-Captain Stephen Blake gripped the command chair as the Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around him, 86 other Confederation ships materialized in the space above the Council. The sight that greeted them made his blood run cold. The planet was under siege. Thousands of Devourer ships swarmed the orbital defenses. Council vessels outnumbered and were being systematically destroyed. Debris filled the space between the fleets, and on the planet below, fires raged across the major cities. "Get me Admiral Harper," Stephen said. Daniel's face appeared on the main screen. The Admiral was aboard his flagship, the Relentless, a dreadnought that dwarfed every other ship in both fleets. "Captain Blake, status." "All ships reporting ready, sir. The Council forces are in bad shape. I count maybe 200 operational vessels left from their defense fleet." "Then we make every shot count," Daniel said. "All ships, this is Admiral Harper. Today we prove that humanity's exile made us stronger. Today we show the galaxy what we have become. Attack Pattern Delta. Target the command vessels first. Break their formations." Stephen felt the Defiant surge forward as the engines engaged. The ship was a masterpiece of human engineering, built during the years of exile. Its hull was layered with armor made from those unique crystalline compounds discovered in Confederation space. Its shields could absorb punishment that would vaporize a council ship. And its weapons, its weapons were magnificent. "Firing range in 30 seconds, the weapons officer called out. "Target the nearest heavy cruiser," Stephen ordered. "Full power to forward batteries." The Defiant shuddered as its main guns fired. Beams of concentrated energy lanced across space, striking the Devourer cruiser amidships. The enemy shields held for a moment, then collapsed. The beams punched through the organic armor and tore the ship apart from the inside. "Direct hit," the weapons officer reported. "Enemy vessel destroyed." Around them, the Confederation fleet opened fire. The Devourers had never seen weapons like these. Council energy weapons had barely scratched their hulls. Human weapons, powered by the advanced energy systems developed during exile, cut through them like knives through paper. "Enemy formation breaking," the tactical officer said. "They are trying to surround us." "Let them try," Stephen said. "Navigation, evasive pattern Sierra, show them how fast we can move." The Defiant spun and accelerated, its enhanced engines pushing it to speeds no council ship could match. Devourer fighters swarmed after them, but the human ship was already gone, repositioning for another strike. "Launch fighters," Stephen ordered. "Tell Lieutenant Amy Richardson to make this count." Amy Richardson sat in the cockpit of her fighter and felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as the launch bay doors opened. Around her, 99 other fighters from the Defiant launched into the battle. This was what she had trained for her entire life. "Red Squadron, form on me," she called over the radio. "We are going after their command ship, that big ugly one in the center of their formation." Her fighter was small, fast, and deadly. Human fighters had been designed with lessons learned from 20 years of development without council restrictions. They were more maneuverable than anything the Devourers had encountered. "Red Leader, I have multiple bogies on approach," her wingman called. "I see them," Amy said, her hands dancing over the controls. The fighter twisted through space, dodging incoming fire with movements that would have torn apart a council craft. Her targeting system locked on, and she fired. A Devourer fighter exploded. "That is how it is done," she said. "Red Squadron, Titan formation, we are going in." They dove toward the command ship, a massive vessel that pulsed with organic energy. Council ships had tried to destroy it for weeks. They had all failed. But Council ships did not have human pilots. Amy led her squadron through a storm of defensive fire. She lost 3 fighters in the approach, but the rest pressed on. Her targeting computer painted the weak points, sections where the organic armor was thinner, where vital systems lay exposed. All ships fire on my mark, she said, her voice calm despite the chaos. 3, 2, 1 mark. 50 fighters fired simultaneously. Their missiles struck the command ship's weak points in perfect synchronization. The explosions rippled across the hull, and then something critical detonated. The entire ship tore itself apart in a massive fireball. Command ship destroyed, Amy reported. Red Squadron returned to defensive positions, protect the capital ships. On the Defiant, Stephen watched the enemy formation collapse. Without their command ship, the Devourer vessels lost coordination. They began to scatter, each ship fighting independently. That was a fatal mistake. All Confederation vessels, concentrate fire, Daniel's voice came through the fleet channel. Break them into pieces. The human fleet moved with precision that the Council forces had never achieved. Every ship knew its role. Every captain trusted the others to execute the plan. This was not just technology. This was training, discipline, and a shared commitment to excellence. Commander Mitchell watched the battle from the surface of the Council. He had led a ground force down to help evacuate civilians before the orbital defenses collapsed. Now he stood on a rooftop and watched the sky light up with explosions. "Sir, the eastern sector is being overrun," one of his sergeants reported. "Devourer ground forces have broken through the Council defenses." Grabbed his rifle. "Then we hold the line here. All units, defensive positions. The fleet is winning up there. We just need to buy them time." The Devourers came like a wave of organic nightmares. They moved on multiple legs, their bodies covered in the same carapace armor as their ships. Their weapons were biological, firing acid and toxins. But they had never faced human soldiers before. Forces opened fire with weapons that had been refined through years of innovation. Explosive rounds designed to penetrate organic armor, energy weapons that burned through biological tissue, and tactics that emphasized flexibility and adaptation. "Fall back to secondary positions," ordered. "Let them come to us, set the charges." The Devourers swarmed into the streets, waited until they were in the kill zone, then detonated the explosives his team had placed. The blast tore through the enemy formation, buying precious minutes. "Sir, we have Council civilians trapped in that building," a soldier reported, pointing to a structure surrounded by Devourer forces. "Did not hesitate. 3rd platoon with me, we are getting them out." They charged into the enemy, human soldiers fighting with a ferocity that shocked the Devourers. These creatures had consumed countless civilizations. They had never encountered resistance like this, never faced beings who fought not just for survival, but for principles. Reached the building and found 20 Council civilians huddled inside. They were people, reptilian citizens who stared at him with wide eyes. They had been taught to fear humans, taught that humans were dangerous savages. "Come with me," said, extending his hand to a child who cowered in the corner. "I will get you to safety, I promise." The child took his hand, lifted the small reptilian and turned to his squad. "Everyone out, cover the civilians, no one gets left behind." They fought their way back to the evacuation point, human soldiers shielding Council civilians with their own bodies. When they reached the transport, every civilian was accounted for. 3 human soldiers were not. Watched the transport lift off and felt the familiar weight of command. 3 good people dead, 20 civilians saved. That was the math of war. Above, the battle was turning. The Confederation fleet had destroyed the Devourer command structure. Without coordination, the enemy was being systematically eliminated. Council ships, inspired by the human example, and joined the fight with renewed courage. A watched from the Council command center and could not believe what she was seeing. The humans had arrived 3 hours ago. In that time, they had destroyed hundreds of Devourer ships, broken the siege, and were now hunting down the survivors. "How are they so strong?" she whispered. Stood beside her, his old eyes reflecting the displays. "Because we made them strong. We exiled them. We forced them to survive on their own. We gave them 20 years to develop without our restrictions and regulations. This is what humanity becomes when you challenge them. When you tell them they cannot do something, they prove you wrong." On the Defiant, Stephen received a message from the Admiral. "All ships, the orbital battle is won. Begin search and rescue operations. Find any survivors, Council or Confederation. And someone get me account of Devourer vessels destroyed." The tactical officer looked up from his console. Sir, preliminary count shows 1,200 enemy ships destroyed, 17,000 fighters eliminated. We lost 9 ships and 200 fighters. Stephen closed his eyes. 200 pilots who would not come home, but they had saved millions. They had turned the tide. They had shown the galaxy what humanity could do. "Get me President Cole," Stephen said. When Richard's face appeared on the screen, Stephen saluted. "Mr. President, the Council is secure. The Devourers have been driven back. The siege is broken." Richard nodded, his expression grave but proud. "And our people?" "We lost good men and women today, sir, but they died saving innocents. They died doing what was right." "Then they died as heroes," Richard said. "Captain, the Council is asking to speak with our fleet commanders. They want to thank us." Stephen thought about that. 20 years ago, the Council had exiled humanity. Today, humanity had saved them. The irony was almost too perfect. "Tell them we did not do this for thanks," Stephen said. "We did this because it needed to be done, because we are human, and humans protect the innocent even when the innocent once wronged us." Richard smiled. "Well said, Captain, well said. Now finish this. Drive these monsters from every Council world. Show the galaxy what we are capable of." Stephen turned back to his crew. They were exhausted, bloodied, but unbroken. This was humanity. Exiled, underestimated, and now undeniable. "All hands," he said over the ship's communication system. "This is just the beginning. We have more worlds to liberate, more people to save. The Devourers wanted to consume the galaxy. Instead, they are going to learn what happens when they threaten human allies. They are going to learn that humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not quit, and humanity never, ever abandons those in need." President Richard Cole walked through the rebuilt council chambers and marveled at how much had changed in 3 years. The massive dome had been reconstructed after Devourer weapons had nearly destroyed it. But more than the building had changed. The entire galaxy had transformed. Ambassador Shaw walked beside him, her stride confident. She had come out of retirement to help negotiate the new galactic order. Now, at 70 years old, she was exactly where she belonged, making history. "The Council is ready for you," she said quietly. "They have agreed to all our terms." Richard nodded but felt no triumph. Victory had come at a heavy cost. 43 Confederation worlds had been attacked during the war. 8 million people had died. The Devourers had been defeated, driven back beyond the galactic rim, but the scars remained. The Council still bore deeper scars. 200 worlds destroyed, billions dead, their mighty military shattered. Only human intervention had saved them from extinction. They entered the council chamber. Every species in the galaxy had sent representatives. The room buzzed with dozens of languages, all translating through the universal systems humanity had helped upgrade after the war. Stood at the center podium, he looked older, tired, but there was something new in his eyes: respect. "President Cole, Ambassador Shaw," he said formally. "The Galactic Council welcomes you. We have gathered today to discuss the future of our civilization, a future that would not exist without humanity's courage and sacrifice." Richard took his place at the human delegation table. Senator Barnes sat to his right, representing the Confederation Senate. Captain Stephen Blake sat to his left, representing the military. Behind them, a dozen advisors and specialists waited. "The Council owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid," continued. 3 years ago, we were facing extinction. Today, we are rebuilding. We are surviving, because humans crossed the galaxy to save us. Humans who we had exiled. Humans who had every reason to let us die. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Many species looked ashamed. Others looked grateful. All looked at humanity with new eyes. "The Council has debated for months," said. "We have consulted with every member species. We have examined our laws, our traditions, our history, and we have reached a unanimous conclusion. The exile of humanity was the greatest injustice in galactic history. It was wrong. It was cruel. It was born of fear rather than wisdom." He paused, his vertical pupils fixed on Richard. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I offer humanity a formal apology. We wronged you. We judged you unfairly. We exiled you without cause. There is no excuse for what we did." Richard stood slowly. "The Confederation accepts your apology, but apologies alone do not rebuild trust. Actions matter. Choices matter. What happens next matters more than what happened before." Other, who had once argued most passionately for exile, stepped forward. Her mandibles clicked nervously. President Cole, the Council wishes to offer humanity full restoration. Your species would be welcomed back into galactic society. All previous restrictions would be lifted. You would have full voting rights, full trade access, full representation. Leaned over and whispered in Richard's ear. Richard nodded and stood again. The Confederation appreciates this offer, he said carefully, but we must decline. Shocked silence filled the chamber. The eyes widened. You refuse to rejoin the Council. We do, Richard said firmly. Not out of anger or spite, but because the human Confederation has grown beyond the need for Council membership. We have 40 thriving worlds. We have our own government, our own laws, our own destiny. We will not surrender that independence to rejoin a system that exiled us. Senator Barnes stood. However, we do propose an alternative, a mutual alliance treaty, the Confederation and the Council as equal partners, equal powers. We share technology, trade, and defense commitments, but each maintains full sovereignty over their own territory. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several Council members looked relieved. Others looked troubled. The idea of humanity as an equal power rather than a subordinate member challenged everything they had believed about galactic order. Raised a hand for silence. The Council must debate this proposal, but I will say this. Humanity has earned the right to dictate terms. You saved us when we had no hope. You asked for nothing in return. You fought not for conquest, but for justice. If you wish to stand as equals rather than members, then you have earned that right. Captain Stephen Blake stood. The Confederation fleet will continue to assist with Council security during the transition period. We have ships stationed at 12 critical locations. We will remain until you are confident your own defenses are restored. Which brings us to an uncomfortable truth, said, her voice cutting through the chamber. The Council military was defeated in weeks. Human forces turned the tide in days. This power imbalance is a reality we must all acknowledge. A's mandibles clicked rapidly. Are you threatening us? No, said calmly. I am stating facts. The Confederation has military capabilities that exceed the Council. This is not a threat. It is a reality. How we handle this reality determines whether we build a lasting peace or sow the seeds of future conflict. Richard nodded. The Confederation does not seek dominance through force. We seek partnership through mutual respect. Yes, our military is powerful. We built it during 20 years of isolation, during 20 years when we knew we could rely on no one but ourselves. We will not apologize for our strength, but we will commit to using that strength responsibly. Studied Richard carefully. And if the Council disagrees with Confederation actions, if we believe you are abusing your power, then you have the same recourse any sovereign power has, Senator Barnes said. Diplomacy, economic pressure, coalition building. We are not asking to be above galactic law. We are asking to be outside galactic authority. There is a difference. The debate continued for hours. Species argued about trade terms, defense obligations, and territorial boundaries. Through it all, humanity remained firm. They would accept partnership. They would offer friendship, but they would not submit to Council rule. Finally, as the twin suns set beyond the chamber windows, called for a vote. The Council will now decide, he announced. Do we accept humanity's proposal for an alliance treaty as equal powers? All in favor, illuminate your station. Lights began to glow across the chamber. One by one, species registered their votes. Richard watched, his expression neutral but his heart pounding. This moment would define the next century of galactic history. When the vote concluded, his voice was solemn. 38 in favor, 2 opposed. The motion passes. The Galactic Council formally recognizes the Human Confederation as an equal power. We accept the proposed alliance treaty. Richard felt's hand squeeze his arm. They had won. Not through conquest, but through strength of character. Not through intimidation, but through demonstrating their worth. Over the following months, the treaty was finalized. Council species began to understand what equality with humanity meant. It meant human technology flowing into Council space, revolutionizing everything from medicine to transportation. It meant human trade vessels bringing resources that had only existed in Confederation territory. It meant human culture spreading across the galaxy, ideas about democracy and individual rights taking root in species that had known only hierarchy. But it also meant something unexpected. Council citizens began emigrating to Confederation space. Thousands, then millions. They came seeking opportunity, freedom, and a government that valued individual rights over collective order. met with Richard one final time before the president returned to New Terra. They stood on a balcony overlooking the council, watching the reconstruction efforts below. "I did not expect this," admitted. "I thought recognizing your independence would be a simple diplomatic gesture. I did not realize it would transform the galaxy." Richard smiled. "Change is never simple, but it is necessary. The old order was built on fear and control. The new order will be built on freedom and cooperation." "Your people are leaving," said quietly. "Half the delegation has already departed. Captain Blake's ship left yesterday." "We have worlds to build," Richard said. "An empire to run, not an empire of conquest, but an empire of values, democracy, liberty, justice. These are not just human ideals, they are universal. And now that the galaxy has seen them in action, they cannot be forgotten." Tail swept the floor. "Some of my fellow fear humanity will eventually dominate the galaxy, that your technology and your values will make the council obsolete." "They might be right," Richard said honestly. "But not because we seek to dominate, because we offer something better. A vision of civilization built on cooperation rather than submission, on merit rather than tradition, on justice rather than order." He turned to face the old reptilian. "20 years ago, you exiled us because you feared what we represented. You were right to fear us, but not because we are violent, because we are free, and freedom is the most contagious force in the universe." Was silent for a long moment. "I voted to exile you, President Cole. It was the greatest mistake of my life, not just because you saved us, because I let fear guide my judgment instead of wisdom." "Then learn from that mistake," Richard said. "Teach the next generation of council leaders to embrace change rather than resist it, to seek understanding rather than control, to build bridges rather than walls." As Richard's ship departed the council, he looked at the star map in his office. Green markers showed Confederation territory, blue markers showed council space. But increasingly, the colors blended at the borders. Trade routes connected both civilizations. Joint defense stations protected both territories. Cultural exchanges brought humans and council species together. Ambassador Shaw entered his office. "Quite a trip." "Historic," Richard agreed. "We went from exiles to empire builders in a single generation." Empire mused. "That is not what we call ourselves." "But it is what we are," Richard said. "Not an empire built on conquest, an empire built on excellence, on human values spreading across the galaxy because they are better values, on human technology transforming civilization because it is better technology, on human courage inspiring others to be brave." He pointed to the map. "The Council exiled us thinking it would make us weak. Instead, it made us unstoppable. We built something in the dark that they could never build in the light. We became what we were always meant to be." Smiled. "And what is that?" "Leaders," Richard said simply. "Not through force, but through example. Not through conquest, but through character. The galaxy is changing. In 50 years, it will barely resemble what it was. And that change will trace back to the day the Council made their greatest mistake." "Exiling us," said. "Exiling us," Richard agreed. "They thought they were protecting themselves. Instead, they unleashed humanity's full potential. They gave us the freedom to become everything we could be, and now that we have become it, there is no going back. The galaxy has seen what humans can do, what we are capable of, what we choose to be." He looked at the stars beyond the window. "The age of council dominance is over. The age of human influence has begun, not through war but through worth, not through terror but through trust. We will reshape this galaxy, one world, one species, one mind at a time. And they will welcome it because we offer them something their old leaders never could." "What is that?" asked. Richard smiled. "Hope. The hope that things can be better, that justice is possible, that strength can be paired with mercy, that power can be used to protect rather than oppress. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy, and that is why in the end our exile was not our punishment." "It was their mistake," finished. Richard nodded. "The greatest mistake in galactic history and humanity's greatest gift." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying them home to New Terra. Behind them, the Council grew smaller. Ahead, the Confederation space beckoned, 40 worlds strong and growing stronger every day. The exile had ended, the Empire had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The crew cheered. Above them, the stars shone bright, and across the galaxy the word began to spread. Humanity had returned, and everything was about to change. Why on the innocent? And let us show the council what they exiled, not savages, not barbarians, heroes. Richard looked at the star map, at the red markers showing devourer positions, at the blue markers showing council defensive lines that were collapsing day by day. In 48 hours, green markers would appear on that map. Human markers. And the tide of this war was going to turn. It was a gift. The council gave us time and space to become what we were always meant to be. He looked at the stars beyond the window, at the vast darkness that stretched away from council space. Out there in that darkness, humanity had found its strength. Out there, they had built an empire of light. The council thought they had won 20 years ago. They thought they had eliminated a threat. Soon, very soon, they would learn the truth. Humanity had not been eliminated. Humanity had been unleashed. They walked toward the docking bay where their ship waited. Behind them, the council chamber emptied, species returning to their worlds, satisfied that they had eliminated a threat. None of them understood that they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. Humanity was going into exile, but exile would not be the end of the human story. It would be the beginning of something far greater, something that would reshape the galaxy itself. The countdown had begun.